Well, welcome to Your In Depth, where we walk through and break down our favorite fictional universes. Today we're continuing our journey in Lord of the Rings in our third part of the Two Towers coverage. I'm here with Evan. How you doing, buddy?
I still have screwdrivers.
Yeah, you're doing the same thing as we did earlier. As I said in the last episode, usually our intros are not the first try. There was a whole 10 minutes of just idiocy before what you're hearing now. But anyway, this should be released on Thursday. That is 2 days from when we are recording, and that will be Thanksgiving. So if you guys are listening as soon as this comes out, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you have a lot of food and enjoy your time with whoever you spend time with if you're doing anything.
Yeah, go get fat.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're you threw me off a little bit because immediately I'm thinking like, and if you're already fat, go ham or whatever, or turkey, I guess. But well, anyway, so where I was going with that, hey, if you're meeting up with some family and you got some distant relatives that you maybe kind of like, maybe hate, I don't know, but more people, you can share this podcast with them and help us out if you think they'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know if you're waiting for a response or not.
I wasn't. I looked over at you and you were like looking behind you, so I was trying to see what Evie was doing.
I have a backpack sitting back there, and she's playing with the straps that tighten the.
Gotcha. You should
things.
open it up, scoop her up, and then just frickin'.
Last night I was laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and she was laying there with me, and so I grabbed her and shoved her under the blanket and farted. She wasn't happy.
You are Dutch ovening your cat. Anyway, yeah. So I guess let's go ahead and get started because you don't have any Lord of the Rings news, right? I don't.
No.
We talked a little bit before, and
yeah, I haven't seen anything new. It's still the that Gollum game, the War of the Rohirrim, and then the TV show.
Right.
I have not seen any new information on any of the three. So.
Okay. Ready? Well, we left off last time on one of our sponsors, Shadowfax, and that was the last thing we talked about. We met that Gandalf, Gimli, Aragorn, and Legolas were kind of riding across some land. But we start off this part cutting back to Merry and Pippin.
Yeah. So basically the ending of the last episode, or the last part we covered, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and Gandalf are on their way to Edoras. So they're on their way there. They're riding across Rohan, and Merry and Pippin are still with Treebeard in Fangorn Forest. But at this point, Treebeard knows they're not orcs, so he's not trying to kill them. At this point, Gandalf has basically put them under Treebeard's protection. Treebeard's going to look out for them and all that. And as we start with Merry and Pippin on right now, Treebeard is reciting poetry to them as he's walking through Fangorn. This is just, it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's poetry that Treebeard has come up with himself.
There was
and now
one
finally has someone to tell it to.
Yeah, pretty much. And there is one point where he was like, this one I created myself, or something like that. So whether or not all of it is stuff that he's created, he is, sharing a little bit of his in there. And they, Merry and Pippin are struggling to stay awake as he presents this to them. Treebeard says that his home is near the roots of the mountain, which is apparently, it seems pretty far away. So they've still got a good amount ahead of them. being carried by him. He keeps on talking, and Merry and Pippin just end up falling asleep, like, fully. But he approaches this kind of like little opening area and sets them down and lets them sleep. He says that he has business to do in the forest. A shadow lies on Fangorn, and then he says the withering of all woods is drawing near.
Yeah, which is basically him just saying that, like bad times are coming, essentially.
Yeah.
Is basically what he's saying, which we already know that, from the rest of the movie that we've already covered.
Right.
But it does cut over to Gandalf and Aragorn talking. Gandalf's just kind of talking about the shadow over in the east, basically referring to Sauron, him building his forces, he's not going to stand for anybody, rising against him. He's going to try and shut him down type of thing.
Yeah, and he says the Eye of Sauron continues to watch, but Sauron isn't above fear. Rumor has reached him that the heir of Numenor? Yeah. Still lives. It's a weird word. I question if like I said, just a little bit of incentive if you want to join the Discord. I post my notes there. I never know if I'm misspelling something because I misspell a lot, but then we come up on names like that, and I'm like, wait, okay, is that right? But anyway,
so Numenor is the overall name for the Númenóreans, which were like the ancestors to the Dunedain, which Aragorn is a Dunedain, so like his ancestor, his family tree, or whatever you want to call it. And so like Gandalf even says like Sauron fears Aragorn, basically fears what Aragorn can become, essentially the king of men, the king of Gondor. And because as Gandalf even says in this, Sauron's not above fear. He has a lot of power, but he's still, compared to his former power and whatnot, he's still fairly weak. And so, if Aragorn can overcome his past and whatnot and become king, he has the ability to unite elves, men, and dwarves against Sauron. He would have the power, the ability, the nobility, the whatever you want to call it, to do so.
So I have a little bit of ice for my drink.
And so Gandalf also does say that rumors have reached Sauron of Aragorn still being alive, and that comes from reaches Sauron, so it comes from Saruman.
Yeah.
Because as we know, Saruman basically has control over Rohan, over the king of Rohan, and so he probably has spies and whatnot throughout Rohan and other distant lands, hearing rumors of Aragorn and the Fellowship, and all of that.
Yeah. He comments that Sauron will use his puppet Saruman to destroy Rohan, like you kind of said. He says that the king is under a spell, and Sauron and Saruman are tightening the noose. Gandalf does note that they have an advantage, though, because the ring remains hidden. Gandalf says that everything depends on the secrecy of Frodo's mission. He says that Frodo must complete this task alone. Aragorn lets him know, he's like, well, he isn't alone. Sam went with him. And Gandalf kind of smiles and is just like, good. Okay.
Because if we remember back to the first movie, Gandalf tells Saruman, before he knows that Saruman is joined with Sauron, he tells him, that the ring has been under their nose this whole time in the Shire. But he never tells Saruman what their plan is, that they're planning to destroy. They're planning, to sneak into Mordor to destroy the ring. And so, as far as Saruman knows, and I'm sure as far as he's told Sauron, the ring is just out there somewhere. And so, they really haven't... I guess they really have not come to the conclusion that, that people are trying to destroy it. Like that's not something they think is going to happen. They think they're too strong for that to even be an option, type of thing.
Yeah.
And so, like, as long as they don't get that, as long as that thought doesn't come to them that it actually, they might be, the Fellowship might be trying to destroy the ring, as long as they don't take that as a real possibility, more or less, honestly, Frodo's safe. They won't have, Saruman or Sauron sending armies after them or anything like that. The Nazgul are out there, the ring wraiths, they're still hunting for the ring, but that's about Frodo's only threat right now. And the ring wraiths don't even know where he's at. They're just scouring the continent, really, trying to find him, type of deal.
Yeah. But we cut to Frodo and Sam climbing up a mountain with Gollum. They get to the top and look upon the Black Gate of Mordor. An army of Easterlings, I believe, are marching and kind of like shouting, and they're moving along.
Yeah, the Easterlings are from the east, obviously. And so if you look at a map of Middle-earth, you only see, like, typically Mordor is the farthest east you see on a map of Middle-earth. But there are lands further east that Sauron has more or less dominated and taken over. And you have some countries over there, like Rune is one country, and then Harad is the name of another country. They are just enemies with Gondor in general, so they're like, oh, we're enemies with Gondor. Sauron's enemies with Gondor. Let's be allies. And so this is an example of some more allies coming to Mordor to assist in the war to come.
Gotcha. But an orc, I believe it is. Yeah, it was an orc. Blows the horn.
Yeah.
Blows a horn, and these big old trolls open up the gate. They start marching and pushing it open, basically.
Yeah, they've got some sort of lever mechanism up there on the wall itself to open it.
Yeah.
And one thing with the wall too, or with the gate, the Black Gate, is it's made of the same material as the tower that Sauron's eye is on, as well as Saruman's tower, which is very strong material that you couldn't break it down with catapults or rams or anything like that. It's a very durable material as well. Just a little, I guess, background of the Black Gate itself. At one point back in history, Gondor had control of the Black Gate, and they had men patrolling it and that type of thing, keeping an eye on Mordor. At some point in the past, Mordor gained enough strength to actually take it back and take back all the land that Gondor took for them after the Battle of the Last Alliance. Again, that big fight we saw at the beginning of the first movie. So, just a little bit of info on the Black Gate, I guess.
Sure. Sam says that he can see a way down from the ledge that they are on, and then he proceeds to slip and kind of fall down the hill a bit. He does catch the attention of two of the Easterlings. Frodo follows down and covers them both up, as these things are approaching. He kind of he's got his cloak with him. He just kind of whips it over and covers them, and somehow completely pretty well goes invisible. He's perfectly camouflaged.
Yeah,
and these things come up, and they're very close to him and just don't see him.
Yeah, and because basically it all comes back to what type of cloaks they are. They're elven cloaks. They've got a magical essence to them. So it's if you use the cloaks to to hide yourself, evil eyes or your enemy's eyes, they won't see you because of that magical property that it has. Is basically what it is. Because when the two Easterlings come over and start looking, it literally just looks like a rock sitting there at the bottom of this. I don't want to call it a cliff because it's more like a straight drop, but at the bottom of this slope that Sam has fallen down. Yeah. Because Sam even gets stuck down in there, it's a lot of loose gravel and stuff, and so when he falls, he gets stuck down into the gravel, up to his waist.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of trapped there. So when Frodo comes down, he starts trying to like dig him out, sees the Easterlings coming, covers with the cloak to hide them.
But
And you did refer to the Easterlings kind of like these things. I just want to clarify, they are human.
yeah.
Yeah, so the Easterlings are human. They're just from a different country, a different kingdom, and they're enemies with Gondor, so they've teamed up with Mordor. But yeah, just for clarification purposes.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't refer to him as so that makes sense.
Yeah, just to make sure there was no confusion there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Easterlings, leave and go back to their, the rest of their column of troops, or whatever you want to call them, and Frodo pulls back their cloak and starts digging Sam out.
Yep.
As we see the rest of the Easterlings going through the Black Gate. And Sam and Frodo get ready to basically like bum rush the gate to try and sneak in. But Gollum comes behind them and pulls them back and stops them and more or less distracts them until the gate is completely closed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he keeps like pulling them back and be like, no, you'll surely be caught, and keeping them back, and yeah.
And I mean, it all comes back to like, again, Gollum's not stupid. Like, he's a creepy little thing, but he's not stupid. He's come in and out of Mordor many times. He's been captured and been held prisoner in Mordor. Like, he's well aware that if they try and go through the Black Gate, they're going to get caught. And he, even though he does want the ring for himself, like, again, he wants the ring for himself. He's not going to allow Frodo, the ring bearer right now, to take the ring and just basically give it to Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
And in this specific scene, he's playing it as like he's trying to protect Frodo, but in truth, he's simply trying to protect the ring.
But yeah, the Black Gate does close, and Frodo starts to run again, but Gollum stops him. Now, okay, here's another thing. We've learned Gollum's name.
Yeah.
Smeagol. So, would it be because of a distinction we kind of learn later on? Would it be appropriate to call him Smeagol when he's acting okay?
Yeah, so the distinction between Smeagol and Gollum is more or less his aggression level.
Yeah.
Because he has split personality.
Right. And that's why I'm asking, because there's a point where he's like he's like, no, he's trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
And he's being more calm or a little more excited but nice and helpful. But then there's other times where he's like, thieves, and freaking out.
Yeah,
and it's like, so okay, that would probably be Gollum, right?
When we first see him as he's coming down that cliff edge, right? When we first see Gollum fully within the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and he's trying to sneak up on Frodo and Sam to take the ring, that is Gollum. Yeah. Gollum is purely self-interested, whatever he can for himself, be aggressive, attack, all that kind of stuff. Smeagol is more or less when he's doing things to help Frodo.
Okay.
When he's doing things for the benefit of Frodo, that is Smeagol. When he's doing things for the benefit of himself, that is Gollum.
Okay.
And it is a distinction. It's a very, again, really the only way you can really visually tell the difference is with his eyes. When he's Gollum, his pupils are very small. It's a very small pupil. When he's Smeagol, they're very dilated. They're very big. And that's like the only physical representation to tell between the two.
Well, anyway,
but yeah, I mean, honestly, Smeagol or Gollum would work either way. Like, you know who you're referring to.
I want to be. I guess. I feel like Gollum is obviously he's between the two personalities. He's the not good one. Yeah, so it's like he's being helpful. So to refer to him as Gollum might give the listener a wrong picture, kind of, even just because of the connotation it has. I don't know. But I just wanted to be, accurate and.
If we compare it back to when we see Gollum in The Hobbit, when Bilbo first gets the ring, we see that switch there as well.
Yeah.
We see that switch between like this more or less like playful, childish creature and this aggressive, survival of the fittest type of creature type. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
we see, when they have the what's it called? The game of riddles.
Yeah.
In the cave there, we see it a lot. It switches back and forth as the game starts. It's Smeagol, talking and playing the game. But as it gets towards the end, as he realizes he's losing, it turns to, as we know now, Gollum with that split. Now that we have a different name between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, either way, it's Smeagol and Gollum at the same time, and it's a weird. I don't know. It's a weird thing to try and describe, I guess.
I see.
But yeah, it's a weird distinction to try and make because, like, in The Hobbit, we simply know him as Gollum, even though he goes back and forth between the two personalities.
Right. And
we strictly know him as Gollum, but here in the Two Towers, we get that second name, Smeagol, and so I see what you're saying. Like when he's more or less being Smeagol, call him by Smeagol. When he's being Gollum, call him Gollum.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
It's kind of a weird try and split up because it's like he is Smeagol and he is Gollum. Like even when he goes between the two personalities, he is Smeagol and Gollum.
I don't know.
It's a weird thing.
I felt odd now that we know his name. It's like Frodo keeps referring to him as Smeagol because he's trying to be, nice to him or whatever. And it's just like, I don't know. But it probably doesn't matter. I mean, they're interchangeable in the end.
Yeah.
It's the same character, kind of.
Frodo calls him Smeagol, and that's more or less to try and bring him back.
Yeah.
Try and bring back the Smeagol, the person. That's kind of his motivation there to, like, more or less prove to himself that, someone that's held the ring can come back from the trauma and stuff that it causes on them. Whereas we see Sam, and Sam simply calls him Gollum.
Yeah.
Regardless of, what personality is coming out at the time, Sam purely refers to him as Gollum.
Yeah.
Because Sam doesn't see that there's still a little bit of, Smeagol still in there. He just sees Gollum. He's always suspicious of Gollum. Type of thing. Yeah. So.
But anyway, they start following him because there's apparently some tunnels. There's another way into Mordor.
Yeah. So Smeagol says because he's again holding them back as they're trying to go to the Black Gate, and tell them there's a secret way into Mordor, a secret path up some stairs and through a tunnel. And Frodo and Sam kind of react like, you knew about this the whole time, you didn't tell us. What the heck, man? And his defense is, you guys didn't ask. Like, you didn't ask me if there's another way. You just asked me to take you to the Black Gates.
Yeah.
And so, and as Frodo says, like, he was true to his word. He did exactly what they asked him to do. And Frodo sees that, whereas Sam, I think, more or less sees he knew about this information. He knew of another way and held it from us intentionally.
Yeah.
Again, Sam is very skeptical, very on guard about Smeagol, whereas Frodo is more open to and, more accepting of Smeagol.
But we cut to Merry and Pippin. And they're in that little opening, and they're waking up.
And this is extended edition, by the way.
This is, it kind of seems like a scene where it could be, but either way.
Merry's waking up, and he sees Pippin sitting over there drinking some water.
Right, he's got like a basin and some, like a jug, and he's drinking some water out of like a little fall.
And Pippin kind of goes on this dream that he had where they had a bunch of, pipeweed and they were smoking it. Merry gets sick. They hear some of the trees groaning. The forest is waking up type of feel to it.
Yeah, as they're talking about the dream.
Yeah. And, and Pippin burps and actually grows taller. And Merry is literally
kinda
watching him grow taller.
he moves up a little bit, and Merry is like, "You seem taller." And Pippin says, he's like, "I've always been the tall one." Pippin replies, and kind of being like, "Well, you're what, 3'6"? Whereas I'm pushing 3'7". And then he burps again and grows, and he's like, 8. Like
Yeah.
he's grown. Then Mary takes the water and starts drinking it. They start chasing around like one another because it's like,
Yeah.
well, I want it too. Like, it's like, if we're growing, I don't want you being taller than me. They take off chasing each other. They eventually trip into some roots, and the trees are groaning and like kind of just grab them
Yeah,
and
the
wrap
roots are
the
like
roots around.
wrapping over them and traps like their legs. I think they trap the leg of Mary and start like squeezing on it, and they get literally like more or less pulled down into the earth by this tree.
Yeah, like basically completely hidden too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, kind of freaked me
Yeah.
out, not gonna lie.
Then Treebeard shows up and sort of starts like shooing the tree away, like you're shooing away like a cat or a dog or something. Starts shooing it away. Um, and then we see, it loosen its grip on Merry and Pippin, and they can get out.
Yeah.
But that water they're drinking, if I'm not mistaken, is called Entwash.
Okay.
And so some of the properties of it is growth, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but it has some properties to it, and one of those properties is what causes Pippin to grow taller right there on the spot.
Gotcha.
And it's actually even said that, I think this is in the third book, but it's not like a spoiler to events. But it even says that after the events of Lord of the Rings, Merry and Pippin become known as the tallest hobbits to ever live because of drinking from this, this Entwash, this water from the trees and from the Ents.
But yeah, so they get freed. Then they're being carried by Treebeard again. Pippin asks if there's any Ent children, and Treebeard says no, as they have lost the Entwives. They like say, he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry that that how did they die or whatever," and he's like, and you explained this last episode, I think, but
Yeah.
and he's just like, "No, we lost them. Like, we have no idea where they're at." And
Yeah.
they ask what the Entwives looked like, because he's like, "You wouldn't have seen them in the Shire, have you?" And he's just like, "Well, what do they look like?" And Treebeard's just like, "I don't remember."
Yeah, and like I explained last time, this is something that happened so long ago that Treebeard has just simply forgotten what a generic, typical Entwife looks like. It's been that long that he just doesn't remember,
Yeah.
And there's a Lord of the Rings game. It's like a strategy game called Battle for Middle Earth and then Battle for Middle Earth 2. And there was a mod team for it that modded it to give it better graphics, new units that you can like make and fight and factions and all that kind of stuff. But with one of those, they actually added the Entwives into the game, basically implying that they fell to the corruption of like Mordor and Sauron. It's kind of like a theory as to what happened to him, because as far as I know, we still don't know what happened to the Entwives in the first place.
Yeah.
Of why they're gone. And so, as far as I'm aware, there's no lore or canon reason or event that caused them to disappear. But this game kind of gives a theory that, maybe they fell to the corruption of Sauron and his forces and like dark magic and all that kind of stuff. But again, that's just a theory. There's no actual in-universe like proof to it or like reasoning for what happened to him.
Gotcha.
As far as I'm aware of. So if one of you listeners knows otherwise, please let me know, because that's something I have wondered about.
Yep, and you can contact us at yourinDepth@gmail.com. So
Indeed.
please inform us if there's anything.
Yeah.
But anyway, then it cuts over to Aragorn, Legolas, and Gandalf as they approach Edoras.
You forgot Gimli. He's on the horse with Legolas. Come on now.
Oh, yeah. I counted 3 horses, I think, and then I'm like, oh, yeah. But no, Gimli is there. Thank you for correcting that. There was actually a couple of times where I had to go back in my notes because I'm like, oh, Gimli is with them, and I list them. I'm like, oh, I've covered all the horses. I got it. But I keep forgetting that, yeah, he's riding. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway.
But we see them come up and they stop on a little bit of a hill, and we see Edoras and the city of Edoras, and then basically the more or less like the throne room, which is where we saw Theodin and when we saw Eomer get banished, is called the Golden Hall of Meduseld.
Okay.
Meduseld, something like that. I don't know why it's called that. I'd have to check with my brother because he knows all of that kind of stuff. I'm not sure why that's the name. I don't know if that's supposed to be like the person that built it or saw the building of it or what exactly. I'm not sure on that.
But that one, the blonde girl, is it Eowyn? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Eowyn comes in and tells the king, Theodin, yeah,
King Theodin.
That his son is dead. We saw last time that he was very badly injured. It wasn't looking good. We see now that he did die.
And I had even said too that the king's son dies. I said that in the last episode as we covered it.
Okay, and maybe he did die in the last time. I don't know, but she just now tells the king.
So from where we left off, he wasn't dead yet, but
so you spoiled it.
From our understanding of how severe the wound was, he wasn't going to survive.
Yeah, but we didn't know that information yet. You spoiled it.
Well, this movie is like 20 years old. If you haven't seen it yet, get out from under a rock, Jacob.
Well, maybe people are watching this and listening so they learn things. And maybe they're like, okay, I'm going to go exactly at... Whatever, you just spoiled it for him, you piece of...
Well, if the shoe fits.
You know what? I think that it does fit. Anyway.
Anyways, yeah, Eowyn
she
informs
comes in and says that.
King Theoden that his son Theodred is dead. But the king is so... I don't know, so far under Saruman's spell, as Gandalf has told us, that he literally gives no reaction. Like, it's not even clear if he's understanding what she's saying to him.
Yeah, he's basically that relative at Thanksgiving that is like 101 years old. You got to mash up all their food, and they just blankly stare at you when you're like, how's your stuff, Aunt Edie? Like,
Yeah, and you go to talk to them, and they slowly turn their head about, 1 degree, and then just sit there.
And then they just like kind of let out a small little gasp, and it's just like they like turn to you, and they're and that like small little exhale just gives a front of death smell because they're gingivitis or whatever from their I don't even know, man.
You hear that. And you're like, okay, cool, they're still alive. Whew, thought Aunt Eda died there for a second. That's basically
where they can't chew their food on their own. They can't do anything. They're basically lifeless. So just that little reaction
basically
is enough.
That's basically where Theoden is at this point.
Is there such a thing as senior verbal abuse? Because I feel like we're ripping into him right now.
But it goes back to Gandalf and Aragorn and them, and Gandalf is kind of briefing them more or less, like, be careful what you say, like, we're not going to be welcomed here, like, keep yourself in check, more or less. And then they head to Edoras. It does jump to Eowyn, and she's crying next to Theodred's body. He has since passed now. And we see Saruman's little dirty, disgusting piece of crap henchman, Grima, come walking in, and Saruman's little underling piece of crap henchman.
No. What's the actual name?
Grima Wormtongue?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah,
I mean, his name just makes him sound like a bad guy.
I know it really does.
Like,
But he's a henchman of Saruman. That's like why
yeah,
he's there.
yeah.
Okay.
And that was something that we had learned a lot when on our lab the part we covered last episode, because Aemir even says like, how long has it been since Saruman bought you? Like,
Well, right, but like
yeah,
I didn't know. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So it, because Aemir even says, because like again, like Aemir's not stupid. He's like in charge of the whole military of Rohan up until he gets exiled.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he knows this guy is fishy. This guy's standing up for Saruman. Éomer has seen, the white hand of Saruman on the orcs and Uruk-hai that we saw where they found Theodred's body when he was severely hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Like Éomer knows Saruman is behind this, and the fact that Grima is standing up for Saruman
Yeah.
so wholeheartedly and like so sure of it just tips him off, whether he was suspicious before or not, tips him off the rest of the way, or tips him off completely in that instant that Grima's working for Saruman.
Yeah. But yeah, crack addict Gargamel comes in and talks to Eowyn. He's being very creepy, weird,
Yeah.
kind of talking to her. And she ends up telling him, she says, your words are poison, and she takes off.
Yeah,
then-
because Grima's, in his own very creepy way, is trying to console her. Like, basically trying to say, like, I understand this is hard, this is a rough time for you. And I think he's more or less, up until she calls him a snake and tells him his words are poison, he's trying to be the good guy, the shoulder to cry on,
Like he's
because
kind
he's
of more
totally
so
into her, but in his own very creepy, gross way.
Yeah. Push the lotions on its skin.
But then when she tells him, because she says like, "Leave me alone, you snake. Your words are poison."
Yeah, basically.
And he even says like, "You are alone. Like, there's no one here for you. You're screwed. You have no allies here. Like, I have everybody under my thumb," is more or less what he says.
Yeah.
Or I guess what he implies. That's what I see him saying. Like, that's the implication that he's giving there.
Yeah. And but she exits the building, and we see in the distance she sees Aragorn and the rest approaching. We also see a flag that is blowing in the wind break off of the pole, and then it cuts over to Aragorn and them, and it lands next to them. That was kind of odd, I thought. Is there any significance to that you were aware of? Like, it just seemed kind of out of place.
I can only tell you my theory on it, I guess, or my interpretation of what it's supposed to mean. Because if you look at the flag, it's very tattered, it's very torn, it's in rough shape.
Yeah.
And so I think it's supposed to be symbolism as to like the state of Rohan itself, very torn and divided. And as Gandalf had said, it's Rohan is ready to fall. Mm-hmm. And so the flag being torn off of the pole and coming down and whatnot is supposed to, I see it as like representing the state that Rohan is in, kind of thing. And just, how war-torn the country is, how weak the people have become because of the war that's going on now between Rohan and Isengard. And I think it's just a symbolism to just reinforce that, I guess. At least that's the way I take it.
Let's see. But they come into the city, they're riding their horses, and they're looking around. Aragorn looks up, and he does see Eowyn, and then kind of looks around some more, looks back up, and she's gone. Gimli...
Yeah, and it even shows the people as they're riding through Edoras. Everybody's stopped what they're doing. They're staring at them, basically, like, giving them like cold glares, like keeping their distance. Again, because when during war times people are very suspicious. These are strangers showing up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, like it's really just showing the fear that is running through at least this city and through the rest of Rohan.
Hmm.
Again, I think it's more of that symbolism because the Lord of the Rings movies are heavy. Like I cannot stress enough, heavy in symbolism.
Yeah. But Gimli says that you would find more joy in a graveyard,
Yeah.
and then some guards come out, take their weapons, and ask for Gandalf's staff. He replies with, "Oh, you wouldn't put an old man without his wouldn't part an old man with his walking stick," being like, "Oh,
Yeah.
come on, man, I'm old." And then the head guard guy kind of just shrugs and he's like, "All right." And
Um.
Gandalf quickly kind of turns to his right, and I think at Aragorn just winks really quick.
Yeah,
I thought it was
and
kind of funny.
can you write a time down real quick? Because I don't know if we should keep this in the episode or not. Yeah. So in this scene, as you know, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and Gandalf are giving their weapons to the guards as you know they're seeking an audience with King Theoden.
Hmm.
Um, there's a specific thing that happens in the first book um, that changes this scene just slightly. But per the movies, we see this actually happen in the third movie. It's something that's out of order from book to movie. Um, so I don't want to say what it is specifically. I guess all I'll say is the weaponry is a little different. The weapons that they have is a little different from books to movies.
Hmm.
Yeah, and like I said, without spoiling a movie, like without jumping ahead all the way to the third movie to explain, you know, what it is. Once we get to that point in the third movie, I'll try to remember to go over it and specify. But yeah, like I said, all I'll say is the weaponry is a little different
Hmm.
because of a specific thing that happens in the first book. That when the movies were being filmed and everything, they waited until the third movie to do.
Interesting.
So.
Well, anyway, so they give their weapons over. Gandalf keeps his staff.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, Gandalf winks at, I think, Aragorn. We then cut
Yeah.
ahead to the prime example of the target audience for Rohan Senior Care. And that slimy piece of crap whispers to Theoden saying something. I can't think of what it was.
Yeah, so he tells Theoden that Gandalf the Grey is coming.
Oh, okay.
Because at this moment, right? At this moment, only Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli know that Gandalf has returned and is now Gandalf the White.
Mm-hmm.
The only other maybe two people that I could see having that knowledge as well would be Galadriel and Elrond.
Yeah.
Are the only two other people that I could see having this knowledge as well.
Right, but anybody else doesn't even know that he died, you know? And
correct, yeah.
You know,
so the only people that know that he died was the original Fellowship,
yeah.
Galadriel and Celeborn, her husband,
Right.
and the elves there in Lothlorien. And again, I would assume Elrond would know because Galadriel would have informed him.
Probably, yeah.
You know? But yeah, as far as his death, those are the only ones that we know for sure knows. And I can't imagine Galadriel going out and sending messages and stuff telling the whole world that Gandalf the Grey is dead. You know?
No.
Because like Gandalf, as I've said before, is a very powerful figure. He has a lot to do with the goings on of the world. And so, you know, he's well known throughout, you know, human, elven, and dwarven kingdoms, well respected, all that kind of stuff. So, like, she's not just going to go and tell all of them that he's dead, you know, like, that's probably something they want to keep hush-hush, especially with, you know, Galadriel with her visions and stuff, seeing a war coming, and now with the events we're seeing here in Rohan, and, you know, the tension that's building. You don't want to go out and say that, hey, this very powerful, good dude who could probably help us a lot, yeah, he's just dead, so we're screwed.
Yeah, you just cut to some, like, kingdom, like, falling apart, and they're just like, all right, I don't know what we're going to do here. You know, there's a lot of darkness approaching. We don't have the infrastructure to keep our own city alive. We barely have any people. We're starving. Oh, is that a messenger? Oh, courier, come here, please. Tell us good news. We have a letter from Gladriel. It reads, and I quote, Gandalf the Grey. Yeah, that dead.
I'm just picturing with this, like, again, like you said, like this city under siege, and they're like, oh man, like this is not going well. We're about to lose. Maybe Gandalf will show up and save us. Like he's always shown up in the key moments to help out. Maybe he'll show up and save us. Messenger hands him a note. Well, we screwed.
Yeah, or like they're just getting so like maybe he'll save us, please, or whatever. And then you just hear Galadriel's like, because she can like talk.
Yeah, you hear her voice.
You just hear her voice. He's dead. Like just like fade in,
there's
fade out.
There's like, man, we need Gandalf. Maybe he'll come with a strategy, something to help us. Like we need some help now. Like maybe Gandalf will show up, and all you hear is, he's dead, 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 dead.
But it's not like an echo. It's her adding the effect herself.
Or just like, again, like this kingdom is falling. Like, we need Gandalf. We need his help. Messenger shows up. All right, let's see what this says. Gandalf got yeeted. Like, hashtag yeet Gandalf.
Yeah. Oh, hey, dude, you and I should start up a T-shirt thing that in Elvish it says yeet grandma.
Yeet Grandalf.
Grandalf. Yeah. Oh, boy.
But yeah, anyways, so like,
yeah.
Most people, and I would guess even like Sauron and Saruman don't even know that Gandalf had died in Moria.
Right.
Right? And that he has now come back as Gandalf the White.
Right.
And so like, again, right here, this is a perfect example. Like, Grima still thinks he's Gandalf the Grey. And when Gandalf comes walking, he's got a gray cloak over him, more or less attempting to disguise himself. But, he doesn't have gray hair anymore. It's freaking bleach white. So maybe he just got older. I don't know. His beard's not as long. I don't know.
No, it isn't as long. Okay, so here's the thing. Usually, so Saruman was the leader of their order, right?
Yeah.
Because he was Saruman the White. Do you think that Gandalf maybe had to do like some sort of campaign where like he were to establish the head of the order?
I'm just imagining, you see Gandalf going from town to town, putting up flyers, vote for Gandalf, vote for Gandalf. Vote for Gandalf, slogan, I've been sent back at the turn of the tide. Vote for Gandalf.
Yeah.
And just running this mass publicity campaign because it turns out that this order is actually very public and everybody knows about it, so you have to vote for the leader, kind of like a presidential election.
Yeah.
You have Gandalf and Saruman up on stage, like doing a presidential debate for the order, like this order of wizards. So Gandalf, what are you gonna do to help the country and defeat Sauron? Well, you see, I'm going to go to Rohan, and I'm going to help the Rohirrim out. Maybe we're going to go help Gondor with whatever they're dealing with. We're going to do this, that, and the other. All right,
yes,
cool,
and Mr.
Cool.
Mr. Gandalf, what about the ring? Oh, I'm not falling for that one. Saruman's right here.
Yeah, what about the ring? Yeah, not falling for that one. Okay. Saruman, what are you going to do with the war coming up and with what's going on with Sauron? I'm going to join that bitch. We're going to take this shit over. What? Yeah, straight up joining forces with him. You're all going to die soon. Gandalf, we vote for you.
Yeah, as he's saying this and the public opinion is swaying, just being like, you just see his like cloak start to change different colors.
Yeah.
Because he fades into not being, yeah. Anyway.
You just visually see him fade into Saruman of many colors.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's resume.
Yeah. Anyways, we see Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli coming into the Golden Hall, which is where Theoden's throne is at.
Right.
And Grima's sitting up there with Theoden, again speaking to him, quote unquote, advising him. And as they approach, we see some like shady figures, walking in parallel to them on the sides of the hall. And Grima even says he's a herald of woe. And Gandalf even is like, the courtesy of your hall has lessened of late, Theoden King. So basically like saying like, yeah, like this crap going downhill fast.
Yeah.
Grima even tells Theoden that he's not welcome. And we hear Theoden finally speak for the first time in this old, like, 90-year-old grandpa voice.
I mean, yeah.
He's like, why should I welcome you, Gandalf Stormcrow?
Yeah. And that the creepy dude, crack addict Gargamel, I think that's what I referred to him as earlier, starts talking to Gandalf, and Gandalf says, he says, silence, keep your forked tongue behind your teeth. I have not passed through fire and death to bandy crooked words with a witless worm.
Yeah, and even with this too, Grima says something very similar to what Saruman told Gandalf in the first movie. Because when Gandalf shows up at Isengard and he's talking to Saruman, Saruman says the hour is later than you think, right? And to Gandalf, that instantly sets off an alarm in his head, like, what's going on? What are you talking about? And Grima says the hour, or late is the hour in which this conjurer chooses to appear. So again, very similar wording as to what Saruman told him. And again, like I said at that point when we covered that scene in the last movie, within this universe, when you say something along the lines of like the hour is late or late is the hour, something close to that typically implies that you're too late, like something significant has happened that you have not seen, that you're not aware of, whether it be, I don't know, like a city falling or someone turning or like changing sides or something like that. Like, that's just kind of their way of talking to imply that something bad has happened.
But he raises his staff and a fight breaks out with everyone. Gandalf approaches Theoden, and he tries to release Theoden from the spell. Theoden starts laughing and says, "You have no power here, Gandalf the Grey," which, another meme moment. You have no power here.
And so this is one point where I want to bring up too, because one of my roommates and I were actually just talking about this last night. And there's some terms when it comes to fantasy worlds. And two of those terms is hard magic and soft magic. I don't know if you know those terminologies or not, Jacob.
I could take a shot in the dark, but can guarantee.
I think I know where your mind's headed. No.
Yeah.
But no. So within fictional universes like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and Game of Thrones and Harry Potter and whatnot, you have these terms called soft magic and hard magic. And so hard magic is where magic has set rules, set limitations, and things like that. So, like, trying to think of a good example. So I guess soft magic would be easier to describe. And so soft magic is where there's not hard rules. There's not really a limitation except for the person's own limits, right? So like a person can continually grow in their magical abilities. And there's not hard set rules for magic. Like you don't have. So I guess think of like maybe like Skyrim where you have a mana bar, right? Mm-hmm. If a spell costs more mana than you have, you can't cast a spell. It's a set hard rule. That's hard magic. Or if you use too much magic, it's going to exert, it's going to put a lot of pressure on your body. It's going to exert you. You're going to become tired very fast. So you have to be cautious with how much you use. That's another like example of hard magic. Whereas soft magic is like Lord of the Rings. Gandalf is a perfect example of someone that has of someone within a universe where soft magic rule applies. Like, we never know the limits of his magic. We don't, as far as we know, there are no limits. He can do just about anything through magic. Or Star Wars is a perfect example with the Force. Again, that's more of a magical thing. There's not really a limit to how much you can use the Force in Star Wars. You know, like, you can keep using it over and over again and not get worn out. For the most part, right?
I mean, yeah. I get at least what you're saying. I might have a little bit of a argument, but...
Yeah, and I think I could think of a specific example as well where that's not quite the case, hence the shirt you're wearing. You know, with Grogu using Force Heal and whatnot, and he tires him out. But that's one specific event in the Star Wars universe where, like, we see a little bit of more of a hard rule to it.
Yeah.
But Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth, right? So that's what we're covering. It is a soft magic universe. We don't have definite guidelines to magic. We don't have definite rules about this is how much you can do without dying, or this is how much you can do without passing out. And so, and especially when we watched the fight between Saruman and Gandalf in the first movie when they're throwing each other around, like, the only time you see them getting fatigued or hurt or anything like that is when they get hit by the other person's spell. It's not them casting, which is fatiguing them. It's just them fighting longer, And so, like, this instance, Gandalf is using magic on Theodin, right? He's trying to force Saruman out. He's trying to more or less cure Theodin of this curse. And we don't see Gandalf get fatigued. We don't see him get, shortness of breath, that type of thing. Whereas in, like, I'm trying to think of a good example, a very, big universe that I could use for an example where we would see someone just get fatigued from magic. But I'm drawing a blank, honestly. But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of define that because, like, I've seen the question posed of, like, well, how powerful is Gandalf? How much magic does he use? How many spells does he have available to him? Type of thing, And basically, Gandalf has no limit. Like, there's no bar set that he can't pass. And so when it comes to magic, like, because as I've said before, Gandalf is, like, more or less a Lord of the Rings version or a Middle Earth version of an angel from, like, the Bible, right? And so, like, the god of this universe has put limitations on, like, Gandalf and Saruman and Radagast and them of, like, this is my instruction to you. I am telling you you're not allowed to use more than X. But with them not using more than X, that's simply them obeying his command. Like, if they chose to, like, Saruman falls to the dark side.
It's not a physical limitation. It's more of their choice and how they use the magic. It's not,
and because, like, Saruman, joins Sauron, falls to the dark side, whatever. So really, like, when we see Saruman literally use magic to create a storm in the first movie and cause an avalanche, per the rules that's been given to him from God of this world, he shouldn't be able to do that. He's breaking that rule. But again, in this universe, like, the God of this universe does not interfere with the goings-on in Middle-earth. The only, like, really the only two times that you see it, one of them is book exclusive, and it's one of the ones for the Lord of Middle-earth. He brings back the Sylvan King, which I've talked about before. And the only other incident we see is when he brings back Gandalf. That's the only two times that I'm aware of where, like, the god of this universe actually interferes. So, like, if Gandalf wanted to, he could just go straight, full power, freaking god mode and just mess everything up. But per his respect for, his god or whatever you want to call it, he obeys that command he's been given. But there really is no limit to his power.
Yeah. But
And
yeah,
I just want to say, like, I saved this specific thing for a point where we actually see magic happening. Because, like, as I've said before, like, we know there's magic within this universe, but we don't see a lot of it. And so I wanted to save it to a point where we actually see magic happen. And that's what's happening here. We see basically a battle of wills between Gandalf and Saruman. And because Gandalf even says, as he's casting whatever spell on Theoden, he says, I draw you, Saruman, as poison is drawn from a wound. So he's using magic to try and force Saruman, or his will, or his mental control, or whatever, out of Theoden.
And, Theoden does the whole "you have no power here, Gandalf the Grey." Gandalf then takes off his cloak to reveal the white cloth and the radiance that is with him being Gandalf the White. And he does then say, as you said, I will draw you, Saruman, as poison is drawn from a wound. He uses his staff to try and remove Saruman from Theoden.
We do see... Yeah, I think you were about to say it. We see Eowyn come in.
Oh, I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah.
But, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a brief little flash. We see Eowyn come in and see what's going on, and she tries to run to Theoden.
Yeah, she tries to...
Aragorn, catches her and restrains her.
Right. But Saruman is talking through Theoden, saying some stuff, and Gandalf thrusts his staff forward, and he, Theoden kind of, falls back in his chair, kind of a bit, and then it quickly cuts over to seeing Saruman flying across the room, and he's got, a bloody face, and he's just, he's been successfully cast out of Theoden.
And because Saruman even tries to, through Theoden, even says, if I go, Theoden dies. Basically, saying, I'm the only thing keeping him alive now.
Yeah.
Type of thing. And Gandalf even says, you did not kill me, you will not kill him. I assume referring back to when Saruman was holding Gandalf prisoner in the first movie. I'm assuming that's what he's referring to. But yeah, as you said, he actually does cast Saruman out. And it cuts back from Saruman getting thrown back to Eowyn running over to Theoden as he's about to fall out of his chair.
Yeah.
And she kind of, grabs him and pushes him back in the chair. And we actually literally watch this old 90s-year-old looking dude turn into a 50 or 60-year-old dude. He reverses in age.
Yeah, he no longer looks like a meth addict senior.
Yeah, and when we saw him as this, what appeared to be this super old 90-year-old guy, his eyes were very faded, almost like he was blind and whatnot. And we literally watched the color come back to his eyes. We watch all the wrinkles and stuff go away. His hair actually gets shorter, and his beard.
Yeah.
And it's this weird rewinding of time that happens to him.
Yeah.
And he actually recognizes Eowyn and starts remembering what's been going on.
Now, I think, and I'm just getting your opinion here, with how long we have run with this episode, maybe right here where Theoden has been restored to being Theoden, maybe is a good place to end the episode. Because I have another 4 pages of notes.
I would say maybe let's go an extra 5-ish minutes where Grima gets thrown out.
Spoilers.
Well, you can cut that out. Shut up.
Fine, I'll jot down the time. But actually,
I would say just to kind of conclude what's happening.
That's fine. But before we do, let's go ahead and quickly do our sponsor break, because we do have another ad read. So anyway. This episode is brought to you by Gandalf the White's De-Aging Miracle Works. Has your mind escaped you too many times? Do you feel like a passenger in your own body? Do you feel like literal death? Are you the poster child for dementia? Fear no more, change is here. Call Gandalf today and get your youth back.
Nice.
And then our normal sponsor. But yeah, anyway, so I guess just wrapping it up, you'll chime in here and there, but Eowyn is beside him, and she's just like smiling, like, "Oh my goodness, he's back,"
Mm-hmm.
And Theoden says, "I know your face," and then kind of starts to remember everything. Gandalf tells him to breathe the free air again.
As he recognizes Gandalf
Mm-hmm.
for who he actually is.
Yeah, and then he says, basically, you'll remember better if you grasp your sword. Also being kind of a call to arms, being like, yeah, hey, you're back. Crap's kind of hit the fan, though, so come on. Can you take action? Let's go.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we do see one of Theoden's one of his soldiers come up with his sword, and he is actually his name is Hama, Hama, and he is more or less like in charge of like the king's guards, like the royal guards or whatever you want to call them. But he comes up with Theoden's sword, and we see Theoden pull his sword out.
The guy's name was what?
Hama.
Huh. So, hold on. Do you ever think? How do you think he referred to his mother? Do you think it was Hama Mama, or do you think it was just mother? I think in my mind it was like Hama Mama, so that when he was like arguing with her, and she's like, she's just like, Hama, go to your room, and he's just like, but Hama Mama. Like Bahama Mama, I don't know. That was stupid, I admit it, but you know what? I'm sticking by it. I like play on words.
So during all these events where, Gandalf is going up to cast Saruman out, we do see Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli start fighting those shady dudes that were kind of paralleling them. And during those events too, Gimli had actually like stopped Grima from leaving and knocked him over and just stepped on his chest and held him down. But at this point, we do see Gimli step off of him as everybody's like standing up and looking at the king, realizing what has happened, and all this kind of stuff. And Theoden draws the sword and is kind of looking at it, and then he looks over at Grima with like this death glare. And then it fast forwards like maybe like a minute, and we see Grima get like thrown down the steps outside of the Golden Hall. Pleading for his life, like, I've only ever served you, like, I was helping you, and Theoden's not falling for it. It's like, you would have had me crawling on all fours like a beast, and he goes to kill Grima, but Aragorn steps in and stops him, saying that enough blood has been spilt on his account. Basically saying, enough people have died because of him. Like, let's not shed any more blood if we don't need to. More or less is what he's saying.
I mean, I don't know if I agree.
Aragorn reaches out. Well, I mean, the king's son is dead because of Grima.
Yeah, but
I mean,
Theoden doesn't know that yet. Just let him.
Well, but Aragorn reaches down to help Grima up, and Grima spits in his hand. And goes running off, running out of the city. We do see, the population of the people of Edoras watching this happen, and as Grima leaves, Hama, says, "Hail, Theoden King." Everybody, goes down to one knee there in front of the king, and even Aragorn, standing right in front of him, goes down on one knee. We do see Grima go riding out of the front gate on a horse, as everybody's, bowing before the king. I think this would be a good spot to end this episode. We kind of wrapped up what had happened there in the Golden Hall, and Theoden is back to normal now.
Yeah, I edited it. I think I'll just end it where I said.
Oh, wow. Rude.
I'm kidding. No, it was a good... I think it was I mean, it's a little bit further along. It kind of gives a little bit more, but
I just figured to kind of wrap up what was going on there, give a conclusion to this specific event.
Yeah,
I think it was a good spot to end this episode. So our next coverage will be part 4 of the Two Towers.
Well, of Lord of the Rings. You guys, this coming Monday for you, we will be starting season 2 of the Clone Wars, but obviously that's different topics. So our next Lord of the Rings coverage, will be part 4 of the Two Towers.
Yeah. Just like always, keep the downloads coming, because every 1,000 downloads we release a blooper reel.
Yep, and this episode had quite a bit
of all of our stupidity and and whatnot.
You read my mind. Yeah.
And then every 25 reviews on Apple Podcasts will be a live stream where you can ask questions, give comments, interact with us as we cover whatever episode of a TV show or whatever part of a movie we were on at that time.
Yeah.
So, like I said before, that's on you guys. Spread the word, leave reviews.
Right.
That helps, our podcast pop up on Apple Podcasts for more people to find if they're searching, podcasts covering Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or whatever other topics we cover in the future.
Yes.
But we do have, the ways of getting a hold of us, Jacob.
Yeah. I was just going to say, we've got, those options, just word of mouth, share it to your friends. And yes, for sure, leave a review. We'll read those on the podcast even.
Yeah.
So you can even get creative with it. If you want to get in contact with us, we have a link in the show notes, the description, that will then lead you to multiple links to where you can find whatever appropriate, whatever method you're wanting to get a hold of us, you can find there. In there also is our Patreon link if you guys want early access and uncensored episodes. There's that option, and plus you get to support the show. But I mean, other than that, that's the methods you can get a hold of us. We listed out our goals, told you of the ways you can, whatever. So, yeah.
But we'll see you guys next time on the coverage of the first 2 episodes of Star Wars. So, season 2 of the Clone Wars.
Yep.
But till then, peace.
Bye.
Deuces.